5 true Halloween night horrors that actually happened. Halloween night, a night where masks blur the line between the living and the dead. We light our pumpkins, open our doors to strangers, and hope the screams we hear are all in good fun. But sometimes they aren't. Tonight, we'll uncover 5 real Halloween stories, each beginning with something innocent, like a costume or even a piece of candy. And the scariest part? Every one of them actually happened. Story 1. The Trick-or-Treater Who Vanished, 1973. Halloween night, 1973. The wind swept through the small town of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, carrying with it the smell of fallen leaves and the distant laughter of children in costumes. 9-year-old Lisa Ann French could barely contain her excitement. She had anxiously been waiting for this night, to go trick-or-treating with her friends, showing off her hobo costume, a simple brown dress her mother had lovingly sewn by hand. At around 6 p.m., Lisa waved goodbye to her mother, saying she'd be back by 9. She grabbed her orange candy bag, her shoes crunching through dry leaves as she disappeared into the evening. It was supposed to be just another Halloween night, filled with laughter, candy, and stories for school the next day. But Lisa never came home. When 9 p.m. came and went, her mother, Mary Ann French, began to worry. By 10 p.m., panic had set in. Police officers, volunteers, and neighbors scoured the streets, calling her name throughout the night. For 3 whole days, the search went on, searching through fields, woods, and creeks. Until a farmer made a grim discovery on November 3rd. Lisa's body was found stuffed inside a plastic bag, thrown in a field outside of town, left to rot. She had been sexually assaulted and brutally murdered. The town fell into collective horror. Fond du Lac, once a quiet, tight-knit community where everyone knew each other, was devastated. And the most disturbing part? The killer wasn't some mysterious stranger lurking in the dark. He was her neighbor. Gerald Turner, a 25-year-old man who lived just down the street, confessed to the crime months later. He told police that Lisa had knocked on his door for candy and that he had invited her inside. He claimed he just wanted to talk. But something dark overtook him that night. After her death, he stuffed her small body into a garbage bag, panicked, and dumped her remains in a field before returning home. Later that night, he calmly watched news reports about her disappearance like everyone else. Turner was later convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 38 years in prison. However, people were outraged when he was granted parole in the 1990s and again in later years, each time prompting protests from the community. Lisa's death changed Halloween forever. Parents across America became fearful. Within a year, communities began enforcing trick-or-treat curfews, organizing safe trick-or-treat events, and accompanying their children door to door. One knock on the wrong door ended a child's life and forever transformed Halloween from a night of innocence into a night shadowed by fear. Just 1 year later in Pasadena, Texas, another Halloween horror would forever change the meaning of trick-or-treat. Story 2. The Candyman Murder, 1974. Halloween night, 1974, Pasadena, Texas. The air was cool, filled with the laughter of children running between houses, their costumes glowing beneath the orange streetlights. Among them was 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien, dressed in his costume for a night of fun-filled trick-or-treating, excited to eat as much candy as he wanted. His father, Ronald Clark O'Brien, trailed behind, helping Timothy and his sister go door to door for candy. It was just another ordinary Halloween, or so it seemed. When they returned home, the kids poured their candy onto the living room floor, a mountain of chocolate bars, taffy, and sugar sticks. Their father smiled and told them they could each have 1 piece before bed. Timothy went for a giant Pixie Stix, the powdered candy in a long paper tube that every kid loved. He tore it open eagerly and tipped it into his mouth. Seconds later, his face twisted. "It tastes bitter," he said. Moments after that, he began vomiting and convulsing. His father cradled him as he gasped for air. Unfortunately, by the time they reached the hospital, Timothy O'Brien was dead. The entire town fell into panic. Rumors spread that someone had been poisoning Halloween candy, a faceless monster hiding behind porch lights. Police told parents to throw out everything. News headlines screamed warnings across the nation. But as investigators followed the trail, something didn't add up. Only 5 pixie sticks had been tampered with, each one carefully opened, filled with potassium cyanide, and resealed with staples. And all 5 had come from the same place. Ronald O'Brien's own hand. When police dug deeper, the picture darkened. Ronald was drowning in debt. Just months before Halloween, he'd taken out life insurance policies on both his children, $20,000 each. His plan was chillingly calculated. Kill his children for the payout and make it look like a random neighbor did it. He even handed the remaining poisoned pixie sticks to other children in an attempt to cover his tracks. Luckily, none of them ate theirs. One boy even fell asleep holding the deadly straw in his hand. His parents found it before he could open it. When confronted, Ronald maintained his innocence, blaming an unnamed boogeyman who gave him the tainted candy. But the evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted of murder and dubbed by the press the Candy Man, a man who turned a child's holiday into a nightmare. On March 31st, 1984, after years of appeals, Ronald O'Brien was executed by lethal injection. To this day, his crime haunts every Halloween. The urban legend of poisoned candy began with one man's greed and a monster hiding behind a father's smile. Story 3: The Halloween Corpse, 2005. Frederica, Delaware, October 31st, 2005. The small coastal town was alive with the spirit of Halloween. Porches glowing with carved pumpkins, yards were overflowing with fake spider webs, and skeletons dangling from trees that swayed in the chilling autumn wind. Children's laughter echoed through the streets as they tested their costumes one last time before nightfall. On one road, something hung in a tree that caught everyone's eye, a figure dangling from a tree branch near a modest home. The neighbors thought it was brilliant. "Someone's really gone all out this year," one passerby remarked, slowing down just long enough to admire the realism. The woman hanging from the tree looked shockingly lifelike. She wasn't dressed in a costume, no mask, no makeup, and no fake blood. Just jeans, sneakers, and a blue sweatshirt. Her arms rested limply at her sides. Her posture, the tilt of her head, it all looked disturbingly natural. Too natural. But no one looked closely enough. For hours, cars passed by. Children on their way to school waited for their buses beneath her. Some even pointed, laughing nervously at how spooky it looked. The morning sun rose higher, casting longer shadows. Still, she swayed gently in the wind. Because she wasn't a decoration. She was a 42-year-old woman who had taken her own life late the night before. Her body had been hanging there since dawn. It wasn't until nearly 9 a.m. that someone finally realized the horrifying truth. A local resident, walking closer, noticed that the prop hadn't shifted at all in the breeze. No flutter of clothing, no swing from the rope. When they stepped forward, the laughter died in their throat. Moments later, police were called. The sight that met first responders was chilling. The decomposing, lifeless body of a woman mistaken for Halloween decor. Authorities confirmed that it was a tragic suicide, not foul play. Her name was never publicly released out of respect for her family. But the story spread quickly across the country, picked up by national news outlets. It became one of those stories that lingered, the kind that makes you second-guess every realistic decoration on a cold October night. For the residents of Frederica, Halloween that year changed forever. The line between make-believe and reality had blurred so completely that even death itself became part of the scenery. A chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest sights on Halloween could be real. Story 4: The Murder of Peter Fabiano, 1957. Los Angeles, 1957. Halloween night, a cool autumn evening, when the streets glittered with costumed children and the faint smell of burning jack-o'-lantern candles in the air. In the hills of Sun Valley, Peter and Betty Fabiano had just returned home from a lively Halloween party. Peter, a well-known hairdresser and salon owner, was ready to call it a night. The clock ticked past midnight as the couple settled in, unaware that something far darker than trick-or-treaters was waiting outside their door. A sudden ring of the doorbell broke the quiet. Peter, thinking it might be a late-night visitor or perhaps one last child hoping for candy, got up and walked to the front door. Betty stayed upstairs. He opened the door and came face to face with someone standing in the shadows. The figure wore a mask. In one hand, a brown paper trick-or-treat bag. "Trick or treat," the person said softly. Before Peter could respond, a flash of light and the deafening crack of a gunshot broke the silence of the night. Peter collapsed instantly, with a .22 caliber bullet lodged in his chest. The masked figure turned and fled into the night. At first, the police were baffled. A murder on Halloween night? It seemed senseless. Maybe it was a robbery gone wrong or a prank turned deadly. However, there were no signs of theft. Nothing made sense. Then, as investigators began to peel back the layers of Peter's seemingly ordinary life, a strange web of jealousy and obsession began to surface. The killer wasn't a random stranger at all. Her name was Goldine Pizer, a quiet, mild-mannered woman who worked as a lab technician. She had been manipulated by another woman, Joan Rabel, a photographer and former close friend of Peter's wife, Betty. Joan had once lived with the Fabianos and developed a deep attachment to Betty. It was rumored that Joan was romantically involved with her. This attachment had turned possessive and then sinister. When Betty chose to return to her husband, Joan's resentment grew into hatred. She allegedly told Goldine that Peter was a cruel, abusive man who needed to be removed. On Halloween night, Joan handed Goldine a gun, a disguise, and a story. And Goldine, believing she was doing the right thing, fell for it. When she was later arrested, she confessed through tears, saying she thought she was helping a friend. Both women plead guilty to second-degree murder. Peter Fabiano's death shocked Los Angeles, a real-life film noir tragedy set on Halloween night. A simple knock on the door, a whispered trick or treat, and a cold-blooded killing that forever blurred the line between love, betrayal, and horror. Our final story takes us to California's wine country, a place that glows golden in the fall, where the hills seem peaceful, the nights quiet. But one Halloween, that peace shattered, and what began as a night of candy and costumes ended in blood. Story 5. The Napa Valley Halloween Murder, 2004. Napa Valley, October 31st, 2004. The air smelled of wood smoke and harvested grapes. On Dorset Street, 3 young women shared a cozy rental home. They were roommates and as close as sisters. That night, they passed out candy to trick-or-treaters, laughed about their love lives, and went to bed with the windows cracked open to the cool autumn air. By dawn, only one of them would be alive. At around 2 a.m., the silence of the house was pierced by screams. They were raw, desperate, and short-lived. The surviving roommate, Lauren Mianza, hid in terror as she heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Then silence. Then the slow drip of something wet onto the floorboards. When police arrived, they found 26-year-old Leslie Mazzara, a former beauty queen from South Carolina, and 26-year-old Adriana Insogna, an engineer, dead in their beds. Both had been stabbed repeatedly in a frenzy of violence that didn't fit Napa's postcard charm. Nothing stolen, just blood and fear. For nearly a year, detectives chased dead ends. They found cigarette butts outside the window, Marlboro lights, and traces of DNA, but no match in any database. Then came the twist no one saw coming. The killer wasn't a stranger. He was Eric Koppel, Adriana's fiancé's close friend, a quiet, church-going man who had helped build the couple's wedding altar. Consumed by jealousy and resentment, Koppel had crept into the house through the window on Halloween night, knife in hand, and turned love into slaughter. When he finally confessed in 2005, the courtroom fell silent. He sobbed as he read his apology, but his words couldn't erase the horror. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, the house on Dorset Street still stands, repainted, refurbished, but forever marked. Every Halloween, millions of people open their doors to the unknown, to masked figures, strangers in the dark, and hands reaching for candy. Most of them are harmless, but history tells us that once in a while, someone doesn't go home. So this year, as you light your pumpkins and listen to laughter echoing in your streets, remember these stories. Because the scariest thing about Halloween night is that sometimes the masks never come off. Like, follow, and subscribe for more.